When I first started playing Echoes of Vengeance, I was extremely skeptical about where the narrative was going. The Sith Emperor is a fantastic villain. He has been built up for so long and has become such an iconic part of the Old Republic era of Star Wars. I personally enjoyed his death at the end of the Knights of the Eternal Throne arc, so when I heard he was coming back, or at least his influence was, I was really worried it was going to be very underwhelming. I was worried they had run out of ideas, and they were just going to rehash him again, and continue using Tenebrae, Falcorian, Vitiate, or whoever as a villain. I am so happy to tell you that nothing could be further from the truth. This is such a beautiful conclusion to nearly 20 years of storytelling. Before I go any further, there is going to be a non-spoiler section of this video as well as a spoilers section. I will give you ample warning before I jump into spoilers for this patch, and I will be selective with my footage to avoid spoilers. If you have any investment in the Old Republic era, go play this. It's worth it. Anyway, so you can probably tell that I'm very happy with the way the story played out. We'll talk about that more in the spoiler section. But, until then, let's talk about everything else. This patch is mainly a story patch, and while there are a few MMO-type things added, they really aren't too remarkable. Daily login rewards have been added, which is pretty cool. However, they missed the opportunity to do what other MMOs like ESO or Elder Scrolls Online do, and add some cash shop cosmetics into the rotation. It's mainly just some generic stuff that really won't be that useful to you if you're an in-game player. It's stuff like credits, companion gifts, fleet requisitions, you get the idea. There's also a special subscriber login bonus, which has some slightly better items, but there's nothing crazy about the system. They added an emote window, which is actually pretty nice, but it also isn't game-changing. The main in-game feature of this patch is the new flashpoint, the Spirit of Vengeance. While I enjoyed the flashpoint, it wasn't enough to revitalize the in-game for me, but it also was never trying to do that. The flashpoint itself is pretty fun though. You get to interact and fight with multiple Mandalorian clans, and their interactions are the highlight of the flashpoint. I've only done the flashpoint on story mode, but each fight seems to be pretty good. I should note that when I ran it, the balancing was all over the place. Some bosses would take forever to die and others would just fall over, but it didn't detract from my experience too much. Overall, the flashpoint is nothing special, but a Mandalorian flashpoint is always a good time, and it sets up some really interesting stuff for the future of SWTOR. The major selling point of this patch, however, was the new quest line, Echoes of Oblivion. The quest lasts 1 to 2 hours and tells the player discovering the mysteries surrounding what happened to Satil Shan and her students while facing off against the servants of the Emperor. This quest clearly has a story it wants to tell, and therefore this quest line is a lot more linear than previous quests in SWTOR. There are some really nice callbacks to choices you made earlier in the game, and playing through on both a light side and a dark side character gave me a number of unique interactions. But there's a set destination here. That isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, I loved it, and the writing was extremely solid through and through. Just be aware that you aren't going to be making any massive galaxy-changing choices in this patch. The story here is great, but if you were expecting something to change on the gameplay front, you'll be sorely disappointed. The combat is still ridiculously easy, and it isn't very engaging throughout this quest chain. I personally enjoy playing Deception Assassin a ton, so that really carries the experience for me, but at the end of the day, it's still SWTOR. While you are in a place doing a thing, avoiding spoilers is fun, there are these enemies that spawn in waves, and they just keep spawning. They have almost no health and are not challenging, but my god do they get annoying. It wouldn't be so bad if I could just AoE them down, but for some reason that's not an option, and it leads combat to being a fair bit more annoying than usual. While in this place doing this thing, the game also reuses a lot of assets. That's not a criticism though, as it does it in a really good way that feels earned, since this storyline really does feel like the conclusion the game's been building to for a long time. Unfortunately, the lackluster gameplay is also an issue when it comes to the final battle of this story. It's meant to be an awesome moment, but you actually can't die in the fight, and the mechanics are not clearly explained at all, which just leads to it being a confused clusterfuck of a fight, which is pretty underwhelming, to say the least. It was a little bit better on my second playthrough since I actually knew what was happening, but I still couldn't die, so the stakes didn't feel very high at all. I feel like this should be an option for people who aren't very good at the game or just want a more laid-back experience, but I just wish they would make the base version at least semi-challenging. Like, at least let me lose. Not being able to die kinda undercuts a really important moment here. There are, of course, some SWTORisms throughout the runtime, like your character clipping through stuff, a ship firing at you but no lasers show up, and some weird stuff like that, but it's not too common and isn't too distracting. The only really bad glitch that I ran into was In the end, the epilogue portion of the story, my screen wouldn't stop shaking every few seconds. It really took me out of the moment, and this happened on both of my playthroughs. At the end of the questline of the Flashpoint, there are a few plot points that are set up to be resolved in future expansions. Based on what I've seen, I'm very much on board and I can't wait to see where the story goes. With all that said, let's jump into spoilers. The questline starts out with you investigating the ship that Satil Shan was on. While exploring the ship's empty corridors, you begin running into the Sith Emperor's fanatical followers who are attempting to bring him back to life. During this section, you get some really good dialogue with Kira and Scourge, as well as some mysteries being set up around who else is on board the ship. While the mysteries are solved rather quickly with you finding the scions of Zakul, this intro immediately made me want to know what was going on. As always, the writing and presentation are just top notch with this game, and this patch even has some pretty funny moments. But the real action starts once you find Satil Shan and her students unconscious. You and your allies prepare to enter Satil's mind and help her fight the Emperor's influence. Once inside, you find the Emperor's consciousness alive and well, except he doesn't remember you, or anything for that matter. Everything he knows about you, about himself, came from Satil's mind. He knows he is powerful and he has had a massive influence on the galaxy, but he has no memory of anything he's done firsthand. It is then revealed that there are 3 versions of him, and this is by far my favorite aspect of the story in this patch. The narrative device of having all versions of the Emperor appear together is just brilliant. They also bicker amongst one another, criticizing the others for their failures. I love how he's the same person in 3 different forms, with different strengths and weaknesses. Because you're interacting with all the forms of the Sith Emperor, it really lends itself to making it feel like this is a conclusion to all of their stories. That's also helped by the fact that every single character who has a stake in this fight makes an appearance. Both of the main characters you control in KOTOR 1 and 2, Revan and Mitra Surik, show up, along with numerous other characters, like Darth Mar, Valen, Kira, Scourge, Satil, Arkan, Thexan, and Senya, as well as numerous other side characters. As you explore Satil's mind, you run into all of these characters, and there are so many awesome interactions throughout where characters react differently to you based on the choices you made. Ultimately, they all come together to put an end to the Sith Emperor once and for all. The ending is just great, and it's made great because each of these characters has a story and has been well developed. Each of these characters have suffered at the hand of Tenebrae, and many fought against him, but only when they are all combined with the Sith Emperor at his weakest. With all of his arrogance and none of his wisdom, are they able to defeat him for good. If you've been keeping up with this universe, you have so much history with each of these characters that there is no way this moment won't hit you. While there are silly elements like the Emperor turning to stone and many people in the back just being 2D models, it doesn't matter, because the build up to this moment has been so good. The voice acting, the music, and the camera work all come together to make this moment feel like an epic conclusion to nearly 20 years of storytelling. I have never fallen into the camp of wishing that SWTOR had been Knights of the Old Republic 3, but in this case, I might be inclined to agree. While I still love SWTOR, there's no denying that this final boss fight against all 3 incarnations of the Sith Emperor would have been far more fun in an RPG format, where the game isn't afraid to give you a challenging fight with interesting gameplay mechanics, and therefore the ending probably would have landed a fair bit better. However, that doesn't change how well this ending was executed narratively speaking. As someone who loved the Old Republic era of Star Wars ever since I stumbled upon Knights of the Old Republic when I was a kid, this ending did everything I wanted it to. Outside of the main questline, we also get some teasers at future stories coming to SWTOR. In the new Flashpoint, we find out that Field Marshal Cole is attempting to unite the Mandalorian clans against Shay. While Cole isn't an amazing villain quite yet, she was entertaining in the Flashpoint and seems to have potential, so I'm very eager to see where they take her character. Finally, in the epilogue, Aaron shows up, the same Jedi from the end of Onslaught. She is going to talk to Satil Shan, presumably about Malgus being up to something on Dantooine. I, of course, really want to see the Malgus arc continued, as I really like the character. I actually might even pick up the book about Malgus and give it a read, as I've been meaning to do that for ages. Overall, while this patch isn't going to bring me back to SWTOR long term, it provided an awesome story experience and a fantastic conclusion for the main arc of the game. I am now far more excited about the future of SWTOR than I was before, and I cannot wait to see where this story is going to take us next. Hey guys, Evo here. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, it would be very much appreciated. I also recently put out an Assassin's Creed 1 retrospective that I put a lot of time and effort into, and I'm really proud with how it came out, so if that's something you're interested, just saying. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. I have lots of videos I want to make, and I can't wait to get on it. So, see you all very soon.